to the Vision Quest video series, a step-by-step guide to holistic health. This program covers homeopathy.
My name is Amanda McQuaid Crawford, and I'm a medical herbalist, and I was trained in Great Britain, and I have a degree in nutrition as well, and so I see people for a number of different kinds of conditions, and I also teach a lot of classes and lecture widely.
In this film, we'll cover the philosophy of homeopathy, also the origins and foundations of this system of medicine. We'll look at using homeopathic remedies for common ailments. We'll also explain the mysteries of how the potencies or the strengths of different homeopathic remedies are made. We'll also look at using homeopathic remedies in common usage for self-care.
One of the most gentle forms of healing is the practice of homeopathy, which respects the fact that every individual is unique. Homeopathic medicine heals on all levels, including physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual. It is a holistic therapy which does not attempt to merely eliminate the symptom, but treat the whole person and the underlying cause of the problem.
Homeopathy is a system of medicine based on the law of similars, what we call the law of similars. Now, this law of similars means that what a substance will cause, it will cure. I suppose it was first discovered, if you like, by Hippocrates, and later on, around 1790, by a German physician by the name of Samuel Hahnemann. Now, Hahnemann, in his time, was considered to be a little bit way out, and he picked up on this while translating a series of Materia Medicas, Cullen's Materia Medica. He came across the law of similars, and he became interested in this idea. And so he carried it further by taking Peruvian bark, we know as being China officinalis, which is the substance used for malaria. And when he took this Peruvian bark, he found that what it produced in him was a set of symptoms that the Peruvian bark was said to actually cure. So I suppose you could say it all began there. And from there, he proceeded to look at other substances, and these substances were generally known as poisons, toxic substances. And what he did was he looked at various poisonings which had occurred in people, and looked at their set of symptoms, and began to apply these substances in a much more dilute formulation, of course, to people who carried similar sets of these symptoms. As he went on, he found that the substances were causing, in some people, some problems, and that as he diluted even further, that the substances were having a better effect on the symptoms that the people were presenting with, that his patients were presenting with, and less of an adverse effect. So then he began what we called his serial dilution, and that is diluting the remedies to a point where there is no, in fact, matter left in the bottle. And we call this potentization of the remedy.
The most outstanding thing that people notice about homeopathy is that it uses incredibly dilute or small amounts of medicines to heal the sick. And this is quite a profound aspect of homeopathy, because normally a scientist would say that these amounts couldn't have any effect on the human body. But we know from our experimentation that we've been doing over the last 200 years that they do, and not only on the human body, but they have an effect also on the psyche. And so homeopathy has this holistic approach where the mind and the body are incorporated in the whole healing process, and their interaction is taken into account very strongly.
Although the philosophy behind homeopathic medicine dates back thousands of years with the experiments conducted by such men as Hippocrates, it was not until about 200 years ago that a German physician and chemist, Samuel Hahnemann, finally formulated the laws and principles behind modern homeopathic practices. During his life, Hahnemann discovered many of the core remedies which are still used today. He compiled a book called the Organon, which still remains the Bible of modern homeopathy. Today, modern homeopathic practice is primarily derived from Hahnemann's experiments on substances using the philosophy of like cures like.
Homeopathy comes out of Germany originally, and it's been about 200 years since Hahnemann, the person who founded homeopathy, developed the principles. And what he did is that he was an experimenter, and he was actually, had been a doctor, and he'd actually given it up because he found that he was really harming more people than he was helping. He went into translation because he was a brilliant man. He knew about 10 languages. And when he was translating one of the books he was reading, he found that some of the information in there wasn't correct as far as he was concerned. So what he did is he decided to experiment with the substance himself by taking it even though he was healthy. When he took the substance, and it was the remedy China, which is what they use to make quinine these days, he found that it produced symptoms in him that were very similar to malaria, just the disease that it was supposed to heal. This was astonishing to him because he had never had malaria before or anything like it. And he went on to continue to experiment with this substance, and he found that the substances that they were using in the day, and as they are today, were producing the same symptoms in healthy people that they would be curing in the sick. So he thought that this was a fundamental principle of healing. And he started to apply this principle in his practice. He went back into practice and he got brilliant results. So the fundamental idea in homeopathy that he developed is this law, like cures like. And the easiest way to explain it in our modern day terms is like the effects of an onion. When you cut up an onion, if you're sensitive to it in any way, you get irritation in the nostrils and the eyes start to water. If a patient comes into a homeopath that has as the characteristic and the strongest symptoms irritation in the nostrils and the eyes watering, I'll give them homeopathic onion. So this is the idea of like cures like in very simple terms. Hahnemann went on to develop homeopathy and developed this dilution method where he could keep the strength of the medicines and he could minimise any side effects that the medicines would have. And those two principles of using very dilute doses and of using this like cures like idea remain with homeopathy up till this day. What's happened with homeopathy is that it became very big in Hahnemann's time and in the latter part of the last century. Then it lost its play in the world as far as being a powerful force in medicine and being widely used. Almost half of the practitioners in the USA used to use it up till the turn of the century. With drugs coming in and the advent of orthodox medicine, homeopathy went right into the background. But it did remain very strong in countries like India and in countries like England where the royal family actually supported it. And so the royal family have had their homeopathic physicians since the 1850s. And in the last 15 years, it's taken a step forward again, and it's being very widely used in Europe, in Britain, more widely used in India. It's very, very common, and it's government supported in India. And I was just in Europe recently, and half of the chemists were homeopathic pharmacies. Yeah, and that's literally 50%. So it's very commonly used throughout Europe. It's also being more commonly used in the USA and in Australia. Again, it's coming to the fore. There are a number of different styles of homeopathy. And I could talk about many different styles, Essentially, there are those homeopaths who are more physiologically based and who look at the local aspects of the disease very strongly, and there are other homeopaths who look at the totality very strongly. So they take into account your history, your mental and emotional states, as well as your physical symptoms and your general physical tendencies. But the most widely accepted type of homeopathy in the world is more definitely specified as classic homeopathy or classical homeopathy. And this is the type of homeopathy that is growing and spreading in its influence very, very strongly. This type of homeopathy is based on the whole person and taking into account the mental and emotional states, as well as the history and the physical disease as it appears.
During his research, Hahnemann, concerned about the safety of the doses given, which sometimes came from very poisonous substances, devised a potency scale for the remedies according to their dilution. Each remedy will contain 1 part of the original substance, diluted from 100 to 1 million parts of alcohol or water. Hahnemann devised a method of dilution by vigorous shaking or succussion between each dilution. He then constructed a system of measuring each dilution using letters and numbers. For instance, a remedy which contained 1 part of the substance diluted in 100 parts of alcohol or water was classified as 1C. Diluted again in 100 parts, or 1 part in 10,000, was expressed as 2C. 1 part in 1 million after 3 dilutions was known as 3C, and so forth. For example, 8C is the 800th potency obtained when 1 part of the original substance, or mother tincture, is diluted 6 times in 100 parts of alcohol or water. At a potency of 9C, a point is reached where not a single molecule of the original substance remains, or no physical remedy is left. So the question arises, how does the remedy work? During his research, Hahnemann concluded that a remedy affects the part of a person which is non-material, known as the vital life force, or the spirit that motivates the mind and uses the body for its physical expression. Today, homeopaths usually prescribe no less than 30C of a substance diluted. This potency is very safe, as only the energy or the essence of that substance remains.
Because of the dilution process, it happens that some of the remedies that we produce become subatomic, so that there are actually no ordinary atomic particles of the original substance left in the medicine produced. However, the essence or the message or the pattern of the original substance is imprinted onto the diluting substance. So when you actually take that medicine, it's as if you get a message from that plant or mineral, whatever it was prepared from, and that body takes on the message, if it's the right one, to change in a positive way. So homeopathy, through this message idea, is really going through and actually making its way through to the controlling mechanisms in the body. And they are basically the temperament, the endocrine system, the immune system, and the nervous system. And through those ways, all the rest of the body is controlled. So the nature of disease can be changed by just changing the medicines, changing the messages that each of those systems is giving to the rest of the body.
Homeopaths regard symptoms as ailments, which are an expression of the distress in the vital life force. Thereby, when homeopaths attempt to treat a symptom, which is individual and peculiar to that person, they attempt to not conquer the symptom, but allow the body to heal itself with the aid of the remedy given. A symptom is seen by homeopaths as merely a warning of an imbalance occurring in the vitality of the body. Therefore, assistance can be given to restore this balance with a remedy, which more often than not can completely eliminate the symptom.
Whenever a homeopath is interviewing a person, they don't take the headache and put it in a pigeonhole and say this is the disease. They always relate it to other symptoms that you might be experiencing, whether they be in an organ or whether they be part of your temperament. So it's not uncommon, for example, for people to get a headache after they have an emotional experience. Yeah? And for us to actually separate those two things would be like burying your head in the sand. So we look at the whole picture and how that headache develops and what organs it's related to, and we treat the whole person in that way.
Nobody really understands exactly how the remedies do work. Okay, a lot of our problems, I think, as homeopaths would be solved if we were able to answer this in one sentence. But we know that it does work, and we know that it works because people are alleviated of their physical symptoms, okay, in the process. Now, it's very important to understand here that it's not good to alleviate. We don't want the patient's symptoms to be alleviated, okay, whilst their emotional state is worsening. And this is what we call direction of cure. It's very important that the emotional state is alleviated along with the physical symptoms, or at least first. Okay? So it's more a question of how you feel rather than has your headache gone. Because very often in the process of trying to help the patient with their headache, you might find it a slight worsening of the physical symptoms while we're dealing with the emotional stuff that lies underneath. Okay? And that again is getting to the central state of the person, of the patient.
The same goes with all vitalistic medicines and with all types of therapy that don't actually use visible physical substances. And homeopathy is somewhat aligned with those different therapies because we all believe in this principle of the vital energy that affects the body. Okay? We believe that the body isn't just made up of bones and flesh and nerves and blood, but that there is another aspect to the body which is an energistic or an electromagnetic one. And as you know, electricity can't be seen. So we believe that there's a very subtle form of electricity that pervades the body, and that's the level on which the homeopathics, being as subtle as they are, act in the initial stage. Yeah? They're dynamic. They're an energistic force, just as the body carries this energistic force. And that energistic force in the body is being very, very well documented with lots of research, like the research in Kirlian photography, and the research that's been carried out on homeopathics, where they've actually made ice crystals of the homeopathic remedies, and they've taken photographs of those crystals, and they've found the crystals to be different according to the different remedies.
The idea is here, what we're actually doing is we're mirroring to that person their own symptoms back again. And by mirroring the symptoms, we find that things come back into balance. Where things may be this way, they will come slowly back into balance, okay? But of course, this may take a few treatments. This may not necessarily be done with one remedy. It's possible that it is done with one remedy, again, depending on how perceptive and how thorough the actual prescribing has been for the patient, and what the patient expects to gain from this, and how they're prepared to work with their feelings and emotions. That's all very important and all relevant to the length of time that it might take to have that person heal themselves. And bearing in mind always that with homeopathy, it's a case of stimulating that person's own healing ability, so that the person, it's never the substance, it's the person who heals their own self. And that's very important. Now, we would rather, as homeopaths, not talk about particular diseases and disease states. We would rather talk about the person, because after all, it is the person that we're treating. So whether they come in with a toe ache or whether they come in with some chronic life-threatening disease is really irrelevant. It's a matter of us finding the set of symptoms, okay, taking down the set of symptoms and going through those symptoms, perhaps delving a little into the emotional state of the person, and there will be an emotional state, as there is with everyone, the mental state, all their thoughts, their anxieties, etc. So we look into this in great detail, in as much depth and detail as we can, and we then begin to go through our repertory, which is a book such as this, right? And with this repertory, this is a guide to our signs and symptoms. We're able to pick out of there, I'll give you an example. For instance, if we take throat, for instance, okay, we can see that dryness of throat, morning, day, night. There'll be a series of remedies that will be appropriate for these times of the day and night, the dry throat. And from there we choose the symptoms which we feel may be closest to the rest of the case that the person has presented with. From there we would go to our materia medica, which is one of these books here, and we would decide and we would choose a symptom, we would choose a remedy from the materia medica most suitable and most similar to the patient's complete set of symptoms. The provings are all documented in what we call our materia medica, and that's books such as this, and this in fact is Samuel Hahnemann's original materia medica, and in there you'll find his original provings that he did on his patients or on the people that actually took his medicines, and everything, every symptom that they produced is documented here in his materia medica. Now, of course, there are other materia medicas. We have many, many others. As time went on, various people became interested in this idea, and the idea grew, and the success of his treatments grew and became widespread and well known. And so we have many other materia medicas that we now can refer to, but everything in the materia medica has been proven.
Proven
Okay.
in a sense of
Proven,
a trial? I mean,
yes,
I don't know.
proven in a sense of when the substance was given to the patient, okay, it produced a set of symptoms. When the substance was given again in dilute formulation to a patient with similar set of symptoms to the original substance, then it was found that these symptoms would be cured. Okay, so he took from that the idea of like cures like, hence the law of similars. The direction of cure is the direction that the cure begins to take place, and it begins to take place generally from the top downwards. For instance, from the head down to the arms, down to the feet. So if somebody is presenting with migraine headaches, for example, we may find that the migraine headaches begin to go after one or two remedies, and it may then manifest in a pain in the left leg. And this is good. This is what we call direction of cure. It's going from the top downwards. It moves from the inside outwards, from most important organs to least important organs. For example, heart, liver, through to the skin. So a rash on the skin and the alleviation of the pain or the symptom from the heart or the liver is a good sign that we have now gotten rid of the actual pain or the problem on the most important organ, and it is manifesting out onto the least important organ, and that the symptoms will disappear in reverse order that they appeared, so that the things that appeared first will go last. So when we talk about healing, when we talk about the word healing, it's important to understand exactly how homeopathy does work on the patient, okay? So say, for instance, somebody presents with a set of symptoms, and generally people come to you because of something physical that's going on. So they may come in with, what we have here is a diagram, and this is the central state, this is the self, this is the you, okay? So what they may come in with is a headache. They may also present with some kind of back pain, right-sided knee joint pain, just various bits and pieces like that. People will come in with and will want to be helped for these things. Now, it would be very easy, and it is quite easy, to match up the physical symptoms so that if they have a headache, we can give them a remedy which will eliminate the headache. Okay, we find out exactly where the headache is where the head is hurting, what they've eaten, whether they like hot or cold compresses, so forth, etc. We can find this relatively in a matter of a few minutes, okay? Now, we can give them something for their headache. We can then do exactly the same thing for their back pain. We can go through the same process for whatever it is they've come in for. However, if that's how we're going to work, okay, which is just by treating the symptom, then what happens to the reason? And this is the string that's always attached to the central state, okay? So what we must do in order to cure those headaches and to have that person free of this problem is to get down here to the central state. And the way we do that is to treat these presenting symptoms. Now this here being the layers of the onion, you might say. It's just like peeling back an onion, okay? We go down through the layers so we can give them something to eliminate the headache. But we must then deal with the next problem that's going to arise, having dealt with that. And the next one, they might come in with, having dealt with the headache, they might come in with sinus, okay? So we've gone from the headache through to the sinuses. But along with this, of course, what we're really talking about is their emotional state, okay? So this begins to unfold their emotional state as we get further down into the central state of the person. So that down here we might have a person suffering from anger, the fact that they haven't expressed their anger or their grief or whatever, and so this is the part here that really does need to be treated, and this is what we call constitutional treatment as opposed to acute.
Although a medical doctor should always be consulted for any serious illness or emergency, homeopathy has been found to be effective in alleviating many problems which may include anxiety, bites and stings, bruises, colds and influenza, coughs, diarrhea, earaches, hay fever, indigestion, nausea and vomiting, sore throats, toothaches, or travel sickness.
Okay, so what seems to be the problem?
This time the flu, and it just keeps coming back.
Now, Karen came to me with a series of flu symptoms, and she wanted naturally something to alleviate these flu symptoms which she was experiencing. But of course, as we began to take the case and go back into her childhood, we saw that this reoccurring flu, which Karen was getting, in fact is getting now, did in fact go back to her teenage years when she began to get bronchitis, and that of course was brought on by an emotional state, which was in her case playing sport, exam stress, working in her parents' business, etc. And so we move along now to her adulthood, where she now has 2 children, married, working, a typical example of the daily grind, you might say. And we find that now Karen is experiencing again this respiratory condition, but in a slightly different way, of course. Her body has changed over the years, but she still has that weakness there. So that again, with the stress of the children, with the stress of work, whatever it is in her life at the moment, we're now manifesting these flu symptoms. So the way we deal with this is to go back to the reason why she has difficulty in coping with the daily grind of life, you might say, and the physical stress that that is being placed on her at the moment. And so by dealing with this part of her, we are then able to effect a cure of these particular flus that she's getting fairly constantly.
I've had a number of patients come to me with symptoms, progressive symptoms of loss of control of their limbs, leading to types of paralysis, loss of motor control so that they can't walk very well, and increasing numbness in those limbs over a long period of time. And I've used homeopathic remedies, including remedies like aurum metallicum, which is the homeopathic potency of the metal gold, and the remedy natrium carbonicum, which is sodium carbonate, to cure those diseases. And those people used to experience attacks of those diseases maybe every month or every 2 months. Some of them have been in a chronic experience of those symptoms, and all of those symptoms have been relieved and disappeared in those cases. On a more simpler line, I've had a case of chronic constipation where the person had been using laxatives for many, many years in order to even move their bowels, and at all. And the homeopathic preparation of a number of remedies, including the remedy plumbum metallicum, which is the preparation of lead, has been very effective in curing that condition. And so they need no laxatives anymore at all.
There are many books written on homeopathy, and it's fine to use acute remedies for acute problems. But for something deep and constitutional, it's very necessary to have the proper advice, because it is more involved than just being able to tell you in 5 minutes here. So we need to go to have the full understanding and knowledge of potentization, of what potency to give, how often we should give it, and how long we should give it for.
So it's not a good idea to just go out and do it?
No, it's not a good idea. I mean, certainly there are many good books written on homeopathy which will inform you and which will help guide you in minor things that are going on, but really it is much better to seek professional help there as far as homeopathy is concerned.
Because of the dilute nature of the medicines, it's quite difficult to cause a problem through homeopathy. And the only way a problem can be caused is if the remedy is actually given for too long. So these remedies can actually cause symptoms in a healthy person. They have the power to actually cure disease. So on the other hand, we have to admit that they have the power to create it. A person who is well trained in homeopathy knows how many doses to give and when to stop, so that there are no serious side effects on the patient. So it's really important that a homeopath is properly trained in that way. And it's a common misconception about homeopathy that it can't cause any harm whatsoever because it's so dilute. This is absolutely not true. And really you should seek the advice of a professional homeopath who's been properly trained before having homeopathy. There are many homeopaths who are medical doctors, and so more and more we're experiencing, especially in Europe, that doctors are taking up homeopathy and using it, some of them exclusively in their practice. At the moment, there are still many medical doctors who can't accept homeopathy and who certainly wouldn't even dream about introducing it in their practice. This is gradually changing, and the main reason why there are still a group like this is because they have a very materialistic or so-called scientific view of what is actually happening in the body. They don't accept that there's anything besides these normal, ordinary functions of the nerves, the blood, the bone, the flesh, the brain. And they see that they don't accept principles like the vital force that we accept in homeopathy and a lot of the alternate therapies. And they don't accept that such a dilute medicine could have an effect over the body. So they're gradually changing. There's always changes.
The provings are what homeopathy is all about, okay? That is our proof of the actual substances working. I think that what the medical profession find, or the medical community find difficult, is not so much that like cures like, because we have a similar sort of thing happening with injections, okay? Although we differentiate greatly between homeopathy and the current vaccinations that people are given. However, that isn't the thing in question. I think the biggest question here, as far as the medical community or allopathic medicine is concerned, is the potentization, is the fact that there is no physical matter left in the bottle. Okay? Therein lies the dilemma for the medical profession. Because what we're talking about and what we're really dealing with here is energies. Okay? We're not talking about a chair and a table. We're talking about something above and beyond the chair and the table, hence like comparing the physical body with, say, the emotional state of a person. So the way in which homeopathy works is through the emotional, mental, emotional, and then into the physical body. You see, it is a holistic medicine, so it takes into account every aspect of a person, and that is mental, emotional, physical.
I see homeopathy as being an expanding therapy, and that it will really take its place amongst the other types of medicine that we have. And I see it as being very important as a complementary medicine, along with the other alternative medicines and orthodox medicine. And this is being shown by its rising popularity all over the world.
The future of homeopathy is getting stronger by the day, because we've now got to a stage where we need to look much further than the physical body. People do understand this. The public are very aware that there are other things associated with their illnesses, and these things are either mental or emotional or even spiritual, and so they therefore are, people themselves are looking for something to help with their problem, and homeopathy is it.
Homeopathy can be used to alleviate numerous ailments, with the exception of mechanical faults such as many back problems. Even so, homeopaths can ease the pain and discomfort associated with such problems, speeding up the healing process and thereby allow the body to regain its vitality.